Good morning. This is Philip Koerper. This is the Philip Koerper Show. This is episode 86, March 16th, 2019. I want to start off talking about the Boeing 737 MAX. And I find this whole thing, I'm probably going to give you a huge different take of what you're getting from the media, even from President Trump. Even President Trump, Rush Limbaugh, I really think they've all missed the boat here. Let's just think about it, for example. When a bus crashes or even in a car crash nowadays, did you know that it's usually over 90% of the chance that it was pilot or driver error? Even when a plane crash, I think they're saying 89% of plane crashes are pilot error. So we have an Ethiopian airline crash 6 minutes after takeoff. Okay. Just looking at the percentages, the chances are this was pilot error. I heard an NPR story yesterday talking about Ethiopian Airlines is owned by the government and it's their pride and joy, and they've had lots of problems with famine and all these other things. So this is really, we're not, the pilots, we can't criticize the pilots at all. And so anyhow, no one wants to criticize the pilots. Everyone wants to blame the plane. And yet, when there's bus crashes and train crashes, we rarely ever find out, or even plane crashes, it's almost always pilot error. Okay, so, and let's look at the experience of Ethiopian Airlines. I think since their founding, I looked this up, I think it started in 1965, and they had a name change. They've had like 68 accidents or problems. 68. You know how many Delta has in that Delta Airlines? 5 in that period of time. Okay. Lion Air was the Filipino or the Indonesian plane that crashed a few months earlier. It was a Boeing 737 MAX also. And so they've grounded these MAX 8 and MAX 9 planes. This is a 737s, that twin engine where the engines are underneath the wings. This is like the most popular commercial jet ever produced by Boeing. And this plane has been selling like hotcakes. It's been flying for 2 years, really without a problem. You know how many flights that's been? And there's 340 aircraft out there around that. So anyhow, Lion Air, they were banned from flying in Europe and just recently were allowed to fly in Europe in 2015. And why were they banned? These airlines have terrible safety records, incredibly terrible safety records. Nothing like American Airlines, like Delta or American or United or Southwest. So anyhow, or Big Blue, or what's the Blue Airlines? I'm blanking on the name. I can't remember. But anyhow, so this is really, I feel like, very disingenuous. Everyone gets all afraid. Everyone freaks out. The cost of grounding these airlines is tremendous. The chance that something's wrong with these planes is very, very low. Very, very low. The Ethiopian rescue effort there and research with the black box, they asked for the French to come and help. Now there's supposedly, looks like they found something in the wreckage. The United States investigators came and left because the whole area has been just totally contaminated by the Ethiopians there. So the chain of evidence has been broken. We have no idea now if things have been planted there. So this investigation is going to be very difficult. So anyhow, just incredible. I think this has been really botched. I was saddened. President Trump, good grief. I tell you, this guy is right almost all the time. And I feel like, he got this wrong, but maybe he really did get this right, because the American people get so afraid. And so anyhow, of things like this. But grounding these aircraft has real consequences. People will lose their jobs. Politically, this hurts Boeing. If this was an Airbus, I bet you this would never be happening. Okay. No, it's Boeing. It's an American company. Airbus is behind. This is their number one competitor. So this is very, very political. And so I'm sorry I thought President Trump would probably hold the line on this thing. And the bottom line with aircraft now is that they're almost all flown by computer. I think I've mentioned to you guys, I've sat next to a Delta pilot once on a flight. I've done my own research with this. Is that, I asked him how, about the auto land feature of the planes. And so it's the computers that are landing and taking the planes off. And so I asked him, how often does he land a plane, a pilot? This is a Delta airline pilot. And he said, well, if the weather's really good and everything looks really perfect, then I might, every once in a while, I do land the plane myself. So it's very, very rare that a computer is not flying the airplane. I know we're really afraid of auto-driving cars, but basically computers very rarely when they're driving or flying aircraft. I try to use this example. My friends are just very afraid of auto-driving cars, and I love driving cars, but I can't wait till this technology comes because like 40,000 people are killed on American roadways every year from car crashes. And like I said, 90% of these car crashes or more it's pilot error, driver error. And so anyhow, they're so afraid of the auto-driving technology. And I said, if you've ever flown in an airplane, chances are the computer took off or helped take off or at least landed the plane. That's the harder part, is landing the plane. And they use the auto land features of these planes. They're self-landing planes. Okay, that's the computers land the planes. That's safer than a human landing the planes. Pretty soon we'll have the pilots out of the cockpit. That's going to come. Now, Americans people get very afraid. But really, some people have told me that the pilot is the most dangerous person in the plane. A lot of pilots aren't going to like that. I know in my field with medicine, the more that we can automate things, the safer things are going to be. Doctors, we make mistakes. We can use computers that can run a program. We can program them to do the same thing every time and not make a mistake. So anyhow, technology can really help us in all of our fields. So anyhow, I'm disappointed about this. I don't know if we'll ever figure this out. These planes, historically, it looks like they're very safe. It's grounding these planes is really hard on Boeing. I think this, from my vantage point, in my opinion, is that this was premature, and there's been a huge overreaction to this, and no one's looking at both of these airlines, these pilots. The Ethiopian air crash, those pilots were telling the tower like they were going to come back, or they were trying to say that. The tower could not even understand them. So English is the official language of commercial airline pilots. They communicate in English. I mean, that's the law. And so these pilots couldn't even speak English, apparently, or it's very hard to understand their English when they're trying to turn back to the airport. So anyhow, chances are that both of these crashes is pilot error. It's very, very rare that a plane will fail, especially these brand new planes, which are just loaded with a lot of safety and technology. I disagree with President Trump. I rarely ever do that he thinks this technology is messing with these planes. They are full of technology, but pilot error is the most dangerous thing with these planes. Okay, I want to jump to President Trump gave his first veto. Well, he's had a Republican Congress, House, and Senate until recently, where the Democrats took the House back over. So he has not had to veto anything. And so he wields his veto. And Donald is being very smart about this. Very smart. And I mentioned this with our previous podcast. Donald Trump is using this emergency veto, this emergency funding or sending money down to build the wall, like $3 billion to help build the wall, is from The power is driven by a statute called the National Emergencies Act of 1976. Gerald Ford signed this. Democrats gave this to him, supported this, started this, and it kind of grouped all the presidential emergencies kind of in a neat little box. And Congress gave the president the power to declare these emergencies. Not very well defined, but also it says in there that the Congress can basically rule with the president, and if the Congress and the president can try to get the president not to declare certain emergencies. So that's in there. And so Congress did that, and Donald says, okay, Congress, you can have your little vote. And so they did. Nancy Pelosi organized the House, and they had a majority send a declaration to the president that they didn't want the president to use this emergency power in this case. And then some Republican senators, of course, the Democrats love this. They're so anti-wall now. They're anti-anything Donald likes. If he likes the color blue, they hate the color blue. If he likes a sunny day, they hate sunny days. They hate anything he hates. They describe him. They have gone 11 out of 10 on Donald. I mean, he is the most racist, bigoted, homophobic person in the country, according to the Democrats. I mean, they are 11 out of 10 on their outrage on Donald Trump. I mean, I think Americans tiring of this hashtag resist, this good grief, this yell and scream anything at Donald. He is not even human, is what Ilhan Omar said just the other day. Unbelievable dehumanization of Donald Trump. Wow. Where do we go from there? We can't even debate policies when she's screaming like that. And so the Senate Republicans, 12 Senate Republicans joined the Democrats in this resolution, okay, telling Donald, no, you can't use this emergency order for $3 billion for the wall. Rand Paul was one of them, and I think I mentioned the other podcast. Rand Paul is very disingenuous on this. It's so ironic that Rand Paul thinks this isn't constitutional what Donald's doing, but actually Rand, in his little opposition paper, he did mention that it looks like he does have constitutional authority to do this. Of course he does. Congress in 1976 gave the president power to declare emergencies and shift funding around. Okay, so if Congress wants to repeal the law, go for it. And Donald even mentions that. Donald is using this power that he can. And, this thing was, in my opinion, this was probably all set up before. When Rand Paul voted to end the shutdown, okay, to give like $1 billion in the funding for the wall, to end the shutdown, okay, Rand knew that I think all of this was going to happen. People wanted cover, and Donald is going to take all of the blame for building the wall, or credit. I would think it's credit. But this has all been outlined in the off mic, and this has been arranged. And so I think Rand, for their opposition to this, is, I don't know if that was part of the plan or not. Because certain people are always allowed to vote no on certain things so they can go home and virtue signal to their constituents. So Rand's doing his deal here. He's trying to be Mr. Constitutional, but I think he's very disingenuous. And I am a big Rand Paul fan. Don't get me wrong. Like Donald, I agree with Rand Paul on very many things. I wanted him to win the primary, but when he lost and Donald won the primary, I got behind Donald. So I was slow to get onto the Trump train. So anyhow, Rand says that this is unconstitutional, which is just dumb. Okay. So Rand wants, the Congress to get the troops out of Syria, and for Congress to have a big part of that rather than the president. But when Donald was so excited to get troops out of Syria, Rand wasn't opposing that at all. So my point there is that Rand is picking and choosing what he's going to declare constitutional or not. And sometimes it is hard to figure out what something is constitutional. And sometimes Congress doesn't even want laws to be challenged very much because they might be unconstitutional, but they like the laws. They want to keep them in place. There's a big balance there. So I think Rand's being very disingenuous with the troops coming out of Syria. Rand is very anti-war. He loves it that Donald is pulling the troops out of Syria. Okay? But Lindsey Graham thinks that's unconstitutional because Congress should have a say-so in how many troops are in Syria. But Rand was against Lindsey Graham on that. Rand said, oh yeah, get him out of there. Okay? We don't like this war. So my point is that I think Rand is picking and choosing what's constitutional or not. And I think he's being disingenuous on that. I wanted to just touch on a few other things. Charlie, this election fraud thing is real. And Charlie Kirk tweets out about this. He says, a California DMV is being audited in Fresno right now for mishandling voter registration info for 23,000 drivers, double registering 77,000 others, issuing voter registration to 16-year-olds, changing party registration without voter approval. Okay, is there any outrage over there? No. Okay, this is just another example how that we do have voter fraud in this country. Of course we do. We know. Everyone knows this. But the Democrats are in denial on this. Okay? We want voter ID laws. We want to decrease the amount of voter fraud. Okay? The Democrats are resisting. #resist on voter ID. They say it's discriminatory. Candace Owens says this is preposterous. She says this is an affront to Black Americans. We've got driver's license. We drive cars. We buy alcohol with a voter with an ID. We do everything with our IDs all the time. We're Americans. We have these things. And to say that we don't is just ridiculous. And for those who don't have driver's license, you can get free IDs in every state. So anyhow, we've got incredible fraud going on. We've got many non-citizens voting in our elections. This is unconstitutional, speaking of constitutionality. So that's really sad. This is another kind of, I think, bombshell, but no surprise. In Bruce Orr's testimony, this is coming to light. And he said, I informed the FBI, that Christopher Steele's dossier was based on hearsay. Okay. So we've gone over this many times before. It's just really incredible that the Democrats and the deep staters in the DOJ and the FBI, Obama's DOJ, their insurance policy was basically this fake Christopher Steele dossier. It was fake. Okay. It's been totally disproven. This was fake, and that Bruce Orr got this from his wife, who worked for Fusion GPS, who paid for this dossier to be put together, and with funds from Hillary Clinton's campaign. So the Democrats do opposition research on Donald. Then they give it to Bruce Orr's. Bruce Orr's wife has this information. Bruce Orr works for the FBI, gives it, or DOJ, can't remember which, gives it to John McCain. John McCain, who hates, rest in peace John McCain, but who hated Donald Trump to the point that he voted no on repealing Obamacare just because he hated Donald Trump so much. Personal vendetta, I guess. So, of course, John McCain hates Donald Trump, and that's how they leaked this information. So anyhow, so frustrating that this whole Russian collusion story is a complete joke, complete witch hunt, just to discredit the presidency of Donald Trump, to be a thorn in his side, to decrease the amount of power that he has, to really go after him anyhow. The shooting in New Zealand of this mosque, this crazy guy, this mass killer, crazy person, evil shooter, videotapes apparently. It goes into a mosque and shoots and kills a bunch of people. It's awful. I really like what Ben Shapiro said. Do not share the shooter's name. I don't even know the shooter's name. Do not share the shooter's evil video. Do not share the shooter's evil manifesto. Mass killers desire fame and attention. Starve them of it. This is great. Ben Shapiro, this morning, this had 183,000 likes. That's a lot for Ben Shapiro. He is right. He is totally right. And people are blaming this on Chelsea Clinton because she was speaking out on anti-Semitism. Donald Trump was backing her up on this. This has been blamed on Donald Trump. Who knows? I mean, these people want attention. I love it. I mean, I know the news. I mean, we want to cover news. I'm not for censoring any kind of news. But we don't have to. We can share this story without revealing everything. And so there's a fine line there with transparency. And I'm going to lean on transparency. But in this podcast, I don't have to share the name. I don't have to go through all his crazy ideas about. I mean, come on. We all know going inside a mosque or a church and shooting people up is wrong. I know Comrade Cortez, Alexandria Occasional Cortex, she's gotten involved in this too, saying how, I just don't think prayers and faith in prayers is good enough. We've had all these church shootings. We need to just, stop this. And so, of course, I think she's an atheist. And so she doesn't really believe in this prayers and our hopes and prayers and our faith and prayers. She, I guess, doesn't understand any of that for the believing people in this world, and believe in God and Christianity and other faiths. So anyhow, she rants on about that, and she has taken, of course, quite a bit of hit for that. I do wanted to and mention that Laura Ingraham, she tweeted 120 Christians slaughtered by Muslim herders in Nigeria. Okay, so that just happened. And the media is silent on this. So, of course, the media right now, and I have had friends who predicted this. When Donald was worried about terrorists coming in this country from certain countries that were not vetting the people and stuff, and this was called a Muslim ban, but it wasn't really a Muslim ban. It was from certain countries that had some Muslims in it, but they weren't vetting the people who are coming to the United States. I mean, it wasn't a ban on like Pakistan and Saudi Arabia or Indonesia. I mean, these are the largest Muslim countries in the world. No, it wasn't, but it was on other Muslim countries in countries like North Korea. But anyhow, so he wanted to have a ban on people coming from those certain countries because of the high risk to terrorism. And so the media immediately had to become they're so anti-Trump. So anything that Trump likes or apparently is maybe not favoring this. So this was just drummed up that this was just very anti-Muslim stuff. The against that Donald Trump was against Islam, and so they're going to be for Islam. So yes, the media and the left had to be so pro-Muslim now because they think Donald's against Muslims. And so that's how the media reacts. They totally, they're lock and sync with the Democrats. They're going to be just totally opposed to Donald. It's interesting that Robert Francis O'Rourke, okay, so he is now running for president. He said he wasn't going to, but he is. He's getting some attention. It's interesting that his father wrote to Reagan to complain about the cost of illegal immigration, saying, we're just importing their poverty. His son just wants to import Democrat voters and shift the electoral demographics in party favor. This is what Michael Moles is saying, and I think this is really true. It's interesting. This is the same point that I've been making this whole podcast. The Donald was for border security, so now the Democrats are going to be against border security. They're going to oppose Donald. He's so crazy. He's so racist. I mean, he's such a homophobe. I mean, this guy is such a lunatic that we're going to disagree with anything he says. Even though the Democrats, of course, used to be a little bit better with border security, they're going to be against it now. So anyhow, there you have that. I was listening to a podcast on my run this morning. It's a great this author. I love Leading Saints podcast. Kurt Francom does this podcast. He's a same member the church I go to, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And he was interviewing Dave Runyon, who's from, I think, Denver, Colorado. And he wrote this book, The Art of Neighboring. Such a cool idea. He says, do a tic-tac-toe box, 9 boxes, put yourself in the middle, and then think about where you live and the neighbors that live around you. Write in those boxes the names of your neighbors. And a lot of people don't know many of their neighbors. And then write those names in, get to know your neighbors, get to know their name at least, and use their name. It's just really cool. A mayor brought this up about how important it is to be better neighbors. And I wanted to close with that thought with a scripture in Matthew 22, verse 26. Master, which is the great commandment in the law? Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Thank you so much for listening. This is Philip Koerper. This is the Philip Koerper Show, episode 86. You guys have a wonderful day, and take care.